Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive where we'll be exploring habits.
Habits,
Yeah, habits. You know those things we do almost without thinking?
like brushing our teeth.
Exactly. Brushing our teeth, scrolling through social media, grabbing that afternoon coffee, all habits. And today, we'll be using Atomic Habits by James Clear as our guide.
Yeah, Atomic Habits. It's such a good book.
It is a good one, and it really digs into how habits work and, more importantly, how we can change them. So we're going to be pulling out some of the key insights from Atomic Habits, breaking them down.
Breaking them down.
Yeah, and talking about how we can use these ideas to, build good habits and finally get rid of those bad ones.
Good and the bad.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So get ready to transform your life one habit at a time.
that's what we're here for.
Okay, so one of the things that really grabbed my attention in Atomic Habits was this idea of tiny gains.
Tiny gains.
Yeah. Clear talks about the British cycling team who went from being kind of average to dominating the Olympics. And they did it by focusing on making these tiny 1% improvements.
1%.
Yeah, across all these different areas,
Mm.
their equipment, the rider's posture, even like the type of pillows they use.
Dillos.
Pillows. Yeah, it seemed kind of crazy to me at first, right? Like, how could changing your pillow make a difference in your cycling performance? But when you think about it,
It all adds up.
it all adds up. It's like those tiny course corrections a plane makes
Yeah.
at takeoff. It might not seem like much at the time, but it can lead to landing in a totally different place.
Completely different destination.
Right. And that's the power of these small changes. They compound over time.
It's exponential.
Yeah. And this applies to everything, not just cycling. We're talking about business, relationships, personal growth, the whole shebang.
Every aspect.
So, instead of trying to make these huge, overwhelming changes, what if we focused on those small 1% improvements every day?
That's more manageable.
Much more manageable, right?
Right.
It's about building those habits gradually, brick by brick.
Brick by brick.
Okay, so now I'm thinking, how do we actually form these habits in the first place? There's got to be more to it than just willpower.
Oh, there definitely is. And that's where the habit loop comes in.
The habit loop.
Yeah. Clear breaks down habits into 4 stages: cue, craving, response, and reward.
Okay, break that down for me.
Okay, so imagine you walk past a bakery
Oh, I love bakeries.
and you smell that fresh bread.
Ah, the smell.
That smell is the cue.
Yeah.
It triggers a craving for that warm, delicious bread. Your response is to go in and buy a loaf. And the reward, that first bite, the taste, the satisfaction.
Oh, yeah, I get it. It's like my brain's already wired to want that bread when I smell it.
Exactly. And over time, this loop gets stronger and more automatic.
So the more we repeat those actions, the stronger the connection becomes.
Precisely. And that's how habits are formed.
Okay, so now that we understand the habit loop, how do we use this to, hack the system?
That's where the 4 laws of behavior change come into play.
4 laws.
Mm.
Okay, I'm ready.
The first law is make it obvious. The more obvious the cue for your habit, the more likely you are to do it.
So if I want to start working out in the morning, what, should I, sleep in my workout clothes?
Well, you could, but maybe just lay them out the night before.
Ah, so I see them first thing.
Right. You're making the cue more prominent.
Okay, makes sense. But what about those days when even seeing my workout clothes isn't enough?
Well, that brings us to the second law. Make it attractive. The more appealing a habit is, the more you'll want to do it.
So how do we make it attractive?
One way is by linking it to something you already enjoy. Clear calls this temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling. Sounds kind of sneaky.
It's all about strategy. Like, let's say you love watching TV, but you know you should be stretching more.
Guilty as charged.
You could make a rule that you only watch your favorite show while you're stretching.
So I get to watch my show, but I'm also stretching.
Exactly. You're making the habit more attractive by pairing it with something you already want to do.
That's brilliant. I'm going to try that one. Okay, what's law number 3?
Law number 3 is make it easy. The easier your habit is to do, the more likely you are to stick with it.
Makes sense.
Clear talks about this 2-minute rule. Basically, start with a simplified version of the habit that takes less than 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, that seems doable.
So instead of aiming for a 30-minute run, just focus on putting on your running shoes and going outside.
It's about building momentum.
Exactly. You're building that initial momentum and making the habit less daunting.
I like it. Small steps, big results.
And finally, the 4th law is make it satisfying. The more satisfying a habit is, the more likely you are to repeat it.
Okay, so how do we make it satisfying?
Well, using rewards can help. But even something as simple as tracking your progress can be really motivating.
Oh, I love checking things off a list.
Me too. It gives you that sense of accomplishment.
It's like a visual reminder of your progress.
Exactly. And it reinforces that positive feeling associated with the habit.
This is great. I'm already starting to see how I can apply these laws to my own life.
That's what we want to hear.
But what about breaking bad habits? Is it just the opposite of these laws?
You're on the right track. To break bad habits, you essentially invert the 4 laws.
Invert them.
Yeah, so you make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult, and make it unsatisfying.
So if I want to stop mindlessly scrolling on social media, I could like hide the apps on my phone.
Exactly. Make those cues less obvious. You could also remind yourself of the negative consequences of spending too much time on social media
Like feeling unproductive.
or missing out on real-life experiences. And maybe set a time limit on your usage or even log out of the apps after each session.
Okay, I see. We're basically putting up roadblocks to make those bad habits harder to engage in.
And making the good ones easier.
Wow, this is a lot to think about. But it's really helpful to have this framework for understanding how habits work.
It's all about understanding the mechanics
Yeah.
and then using that knowledge to our advantage.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground already. But I feel like there's another important piece to this puzzle.
What's that?
It's the role of identity.
Oh, yes. Identity. That's a big one.
Clear argues that our current habits are a reflection of our current identity. To change our habits for good, we need to start by changing our beliefs about ourselves.
So it's not just about wanting to be a certain type of person. It's about actually believing you are that person.
Yeah, like instead of saying, I'm trying to be more healthy, you say, I am a healthy person.
Exactly. You're shifting your self-image.
And when you believe you are that person, you naturally start making choices that align with that belief.
Your actions become a reflection of your identity.
It's like you're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy.
That's a great way to put it.
It's so powerful.
It is powerful. And it's something we often overlook.
We get so focused on the actions, but it's really about the underlying beliefs.
And those beliefs shape everything.
It's mind-blowing, so we need to cultivate the identity of the person we want to become.
One habit at a time.
This is all making me rethink my approach to personal growth. We've talked about tiny gains, the habit loop, the 4 laws of behavior change, and now this concept of identity.
It's a lot to take in.
It is, but it's so exciting. Atomic Habits breaks down this complex process of habit formation into these manageable steps.
Manageable and actionable.
And that's what makes it so empowering. But wait, there's more. We haven't even talked about the Goldilocks rule yet.
The Goldilocks rule.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, the Goldilocks rule is all about finding that sweet spot.
Sweet.
That perfect level of challenge.
Oh.
It states that we're most motivated when we're working on tasks that are right on the edge of our current abilities.
Not too easy, not too hard.
Exactly. Just the right amount of challenge to keep us engaged and growing.
Makes sense. So how does this apply to habits?
Once a habit becomes automatic, it's important to challenge yourself to refine it, push your skills a little further.
Avoid getting complacent.
Exactly. It's about continuous improvement.
I can see how that would be important for long-term habit formation. We don't want to get bored or stuck in a rut.
That's the key. Keep stretching yourself. Keep striving for that next level.
It's like mastering a musical instrument.
Or any skill, really.
You break it down into smaller components, practice diligently, and then gradually increase the complexity.
And as you master each level, you unlock new possibilities.
I'm starting to get the picture. It's about finding that flow state where we're challenged but not overwhelmed.
But that's where the magic happens.
This is all so eye-opening. I'm already starting to see my own habits in a whole new light.
That's the first step.
Atomic Habits really does provide a practical framework for understanding and changing any behavior.
Any behavior.
It's about taking control of our actions and creating a life that aligns with our goals and values.
It's about becoming the architects of our own lives.
And that's a pretty amazing thing. So much good stuff in this book.
Right. So many strategies.
It's about giving us that control.
Exactly. Control over our lives.
But I'm wondering for our listener, like, where do they even begin?
Well, I think a good starting point is just awareness. Becoming more aware of your current habits.
Like taking inventory.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what are you doing on autopilot every day?
Good and bad.
Right, both the good and the bad. And then think about which habits are actually helping you and which ones might be holding you back.
So it's like a habit audit.
I like that. A habit audit. And once you've identified those habits you want to change, that's where the 4 laws come in.
Ah, yes, our trusty 4 laws.
They're your tools, your roadmap for change. You don't need to change everything overnight, you know?
Small steps.
Yeah, start with one small change and just focus on being consistent.
Consistency is key.
It really is. And those small wins along the way, they keep you motivated.
They snowball into something bigger.
Exactly. But, there are always those stubborn habits.
The ones that just won't quit.
Right. And for those, I think the idea of making it unsatisfying can be super effective.
Unsatisfying. Okay, how do we do that?
Sometimes it's about introducing a consequence.
Ooh, a consequence.
Yeah, like maybe you have to pay a friend every time you slip up.
Ouch, that would hurt.
It would. Or maybe you publicly announce your goal to add some accountability.
Oh, so like social pressure.
Exactly. You're raising the stakes.
Clever, I like it. But going back to the positive changes for a sec, I'm really into this temptation bundling thing.
Oh, yeah. It's a good one.
Any other examples of how we can use that?
Well, we talked about watching TV while stretching. But let's say you want to learn a new language but find studying vocabulary boring.
Ugh, flashcards.
You could bundle it with listening to music. Only allow yourself to listen to your favorite playlist while reviewing those flashcards.
So I get my music fix, but I'm also learning.
Exactly. You're making it more enjoyable.
It's all about making it fun.
And that makes it sustainable.
Okay, but I'm also thinking about our environment. How does that play into all of this?
Oh, our environment's huge. Clear talks about making the cues for your desired habits more prominent.
Like putting a big sign on the fridge.
Well, maybe not a sign. But if you want to drink more water, keep a full water bottle on your desk where you can see it.
Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Exactly. And if you're trying to cut back on snacking, keep those tempting treats out of sight.
It's about being mindful of our surroundings.
Yes, it's about creating an environment that supports your goals.
Okay, all this talk about environment is making me think I need to declutter my desk.
A clean space can make a big difference.
It's like a clean slate for good habits.
I like that. But while we're on this topic of self-improvement,
Yeah.
I want to go back to this idea of identity for a moment.
We were getting pretty deep with that earlier.
It's so crucial to understand that your habits are an extension of who you believe you are.
So it's not about forcing ourselves to do things we don't really believe we can do.
Right. It's about changing our self-image.
If I want to be a writer, I need to start believing I am a writer.
Precisely. It's about embodying that identity.
Even before I have a published book.
Even before the results show up. Because when you believe it, you start acting in alignment with that belief.
You start making different choices.
You show up differently in the world.
It's powerful stuff. So we need to choose who we want to be and then let our habits reflect that.
One habit at a time.
It's a journey, not a destination.
And it's a journey we can all choose to embark on.
I love that. And you know what's so great about Atomic Habits?
What is it?
Is that it's not just theory. Clear gives us these practical strategies.
Actionable advice.
Yeah, things we can start implementing today. It's not just about understanding why we have these habits. It's about giving us the tools to change them.
Exactly. It's about empowering us to create the lives we want.
And that's what makes it so inspiring. We can all become architects of our own habits and ultimately our own lives.
It's an ongoing process.
Always evolving.
But it's a process worth embracing.
We've covered so much in this deep dive. Those tiny gains, the habit loop, how our identity shapes our habits. Really fascinating stuff. But as we wrap up our look at Atomic Habits, what's the one thing you hope our listener takes away from all this?
We talked a lot about how our environment can either help or hurt us when it comes to building good habits. So I want to leave you with this. If you could make one change to your surroundings right now, what would it be? What's that one tweak that could make it just a little bit easier to stick to that habit you're working on?
That's a great question. It makes you stop and think about how to set yourself up for success. Could be something small, like tidying up your workspace to cut down on distractions, or putting that book you want to read on your nightstand where you can't miss it, or even unsubscribing from those tempting email lists that always make you want to buy stuff.
Exactly. Be intentional with your environment. Create a space that supports your goals. Because it's not about being controlled by your surroundings. It's about taking charge and shaping them to work for you.
This whole deep dive has been such an eye-opener. I feel like I finally understand how habits work and how I can use them to make real and lasting changes in my life.
And that's what it's all about. Not being a slave to your habits, but being the one in control. And remember, even tiny changes, those little tweaks to your routine, they can add up to something big over time.
It's all about those small steps, right? Building momentum day by day.
Exactly. So keep experimenting, keep learning, and keep building those atomic habits one step at a time.
Such great advice. Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive into atomic habits. We hope you found it helpful and inspiring.
We did too.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep diving deep into those things that you're curious about.